Well, good afternoon, everyone who has joined me on this lovely Sunday. The sun has finally come out here in the Washington, D.C. area. So this is the first of a series of Facebook Live dramas. No, they're not dramas, really. They're just me talking, and hopefully this will develop into a more interactive situation where together we can talk about this. I don't know if it's a philosophy or an attitude towards life or just a boneheaded idea that's trite. I don't know, maybe all of the above. And God forbid we should be trite, but sometimes the trite can be true. So what the heck is Life Indigo? I mean, I sound like some sort of self-help fanatic touting some crazy philosophy, 10 steps to nirvana, that sort of thing. And that's really not it at all. This is really intended to be sort of an interactive, iterative exploration of a concept that I call Life Indigo. So first off, where does Life Indigo come from? Where did I get this idea? Well, for one, it's the title of my fantasy book series, Life Indigo. The first book in the series, Katz Permutzenmacher's Cursed Hat, is book one. And the purpose is not to sell you my book on this, that not at all, but just to show you where the genesis of this concept came from. And in the course of conducting research for this book and looking into the history of jazz music, its development from ragtime to jazz, and listening to a lot of different examples of jazz music, I really found that I liked, not just liked, but hello, Stephanie Bentley. I'm glad that you have joined me here. I assume that your friend Laura, I forgot her last name. Oh, yes, she is also there. Welcome. So I was just saying, Life Indigo, where did it come from? It's the title of my fantasy series. And in the course of conducting research for this book, particularly in the era of the 20s and the 30s, I did a lot of research into jazz music, listening to different types of jazz music, because music is a very important pastime for the main character in that book. And one of the pieces of music that really hit a chord with me, I hate to get into puns, but it did strike a chord with me, was Duke Ellington's Mood Indigo. It's one of the jazz standards. And that song, actually, I didn't even realize that there were words to this song. So it was really the instrumental version that really appealed to me in some way that I couldn't quite articulate. It was very visceral. So again, the name of the song is Mood Indigo, and it's this very beautiful, but also sort of very sad tune. And then, of course, later on I learned, well, not of course, but I'm telling you that later on I learned that there were lyrics to this song, sort of the operative lyric being, "You ain't been blue, no, 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 till you've had that mood indigo." So it's sort of this very deep, almost existential type of blues. Yet in this profound sort of sadness, there's this beauty. So they're sort of wrapped up in one another. And that was sort of the tone for this first book that I wrote, where it's set during a very fraught time, the rise of the Nazis, World War II, maybe one of the darkest times in human history. but there was also an opportunity for laughter, for observing the absurdity of the horrible things going on around the characters. And that, I think, appealed to something very central in my character, that, you know, maybe it's a coping mechanism. I think comedy often is a coping mechanism for dealing with difficulties. But I realized how essential comedy is in giving me perspective, giving me that sort of psychic distance between myself and any of the difficulties that are surrounding me. And that was true for the characters in that book. So the song Mood Indigo was, so there's an instrumental version performed by Duke Ellington's band and many others. The song with the lyrics was covered by Ella Fitzgerald and Frank Sinatra, Joe Jackson, Annie Lennox. I encourage you to go to Spotify and check out these different versions. It's interesting that the interpretations are very different and all very beautiful in their different ways. So the color of this fictional universe that I have begun to craft in this trilogy is indigo. The idea being that each universe has a color, and this particular one that I've set my story in, the color is indigo. And the universe itself, so the universe has a color, but it also has a sound. So the idea being that the creative act that began this universe was the pluck of a string. And the pluck of this particular string made a B-flat sound, which is sort of the key note for me in the Mood Indigo song, among other Duke Ellington songs. So the color indigo and the B-flat turn into sort of integral parts of the subtext of this fantasy series. But what I realized after publishing the book and talking about it and really thinking about what was this thing that I created. Oh, my son has checked in saying, "Hello! Hello!" Apparently he has become some sort of British person, lower class, which is typical for a Fenton Miller. So I'm glad that he is holding up the status of our family. Anyway, in reflecting on this universe that I created, the fictional universe, I realized that Life Indigo can be more than just something that's contained in the pages of a book. That it is a reflection of my own outlook, for better or for worse, my own attitude, for better or for worse, on life. That it's not easy, and there are a lot of difficulties, yet thank fate or God or whatever, nature, Mother Nature, that I've got that I've got a sense of humor. At least I find myself funny. So, you know, I'm my biggest fan, and, you know, that's what's most important. But anyway, so I've been thinking about, in talking about this book and embarking on the next two books in the series, I've been really thinking about how to incorporate, or not incorporate, but kind of tease out this philosophy that's sort of inherent in my own psychology, in my own approach to life. And I don't know if it would be beneficial to other people. I think so. I'm pretty sure that you know, people struggle with life, right? I mean, that's pretty universal. I don't think that's such a controversial thing to say. And that laughter, the ability to laugh in the face of tragedy and absurdity, I think is healthy. to a degree. Of course, if you take anything to extreme, then you might have to be, put in a straitjacket. But, like anything else, moderation is usually a good thing. Oh, I'm being complimented on my good use of hands, my gesticulation. So I will stop using my hands because I've been complimented on my hands, which suggests that the hands are now a distraction. So this will now be a hands-free presentation going forward. Thank you for that. So I'm going to start with a working definition of this attitude or philosophy, whatever you want to call it. Life Indigo, a working definition. It's not something that's set in stone. As we continue to do these Facebook Live presentations, we can hash it out, we can tweak it, we can develop corollaries. That's such a great word. Corollaries. Of course, you don't have to say it that way in an effeminate way, because corollaries is not an effeminate word at all. In fact, I've only used it in connection with logic, right? Principles, and then there's always a little bit of an exception, something like that. So anyway, I'm digressing. So let's start with the working definition. Enough blathering. So the idea is, with Life Indigo, we can recognize life's beauty, but also the cruelty and absurdity. I'm sorry I used my hands. I lied about this being a hands-free presentation. So we recognize life's beauty, cruelty, and absurdity. But we also realize that it's easy to laugh when we're in the light. That's easy. What's hard, what I think is wisdom, is the ability to laugh in the darkness, even at the darkness. And so through the course of these videos, I want to explore sort of the validity and utility of this philosophy through examples from literature, myth, folklore, music, and life. And I welcome your examples. If we can talk about them live, or if you want to leave a comment later, if you think of something later, it's something that I definitely will address in a subsequent video. So this is really knowledge gathering for me. I'm relying on you because there's only so much one person can know, even someone as brilliant and handsome as I. I'm limited, so I'm really, it takes a village. It takes a village to transform the village idiot into a wise philosopher king. That's what I'm saying. So, and really, and I'm being serious now, this endeavor will not succeed, or at least it certainly won't be as successful if I don't have participation for people out there, because that is really going to help me and help us. Maybe we can learn together. All right, enough of the trite sort of platitudes. So I'm gonna sort of launch into this with the one example that we'll talk about today of what I think sort of encapsulates Life Indigo. And this is a short excerpt from a memoir written by Leo Tolstoy, the famous Russian writer of War and Peace fame and Anna Karenina fame. No, Anna Karenina. I always forget how many Anna-nanas there are, but anyway, with friends like that, who needs Anna Karenina? Anyway, so he wrote a memoir. It's often called a spiritual memoir. I don't really know why it would be called a spiritual memoir, since I believe he was alive and in human form when he wrote it. But in any event, it's a memoir. And in one part of that memoir, he evokes an old Eastern fable about mortality. And this is how he summarizes it. So I'm going to read from his memoir, this old folkloric tale. It says, a traveler is taken unawares on the steppes. Steps, that's S-T-E-P-P-E-S. So the geographic steppes. A traveler is taken unawares on the steppes by a ferocious wild animal. In order to escape the beast, the traveler hides in an empty well. But at the bottom of the well, he sees a dragon with its jaws open, ready to devour him. The poor fellow does not dare to climb out because he's afraid of being eaten by the rapacious beast. Neither does he dare drop to the bottom of the well for fear of being eaten by the dragon. So he seizes hold of a branch of a bush that is growing in the crevices of the well and clings onto it. His arms grow weak, and he knows that he will soon have to resign himself to the death that awaits him on either side. Yet he still clings on. And while he is holding onto the branch, he looks around and sees that two mice, one black and one white, are steadily working their way round the bush he is hanging from, gnawing away at it. Sooner or later, they will eat through it, and the branch will snap, and he will fall into the jaws of the dragon. The traveler sees this and knows that he will inevitably perish. But while he is still hanging there, he sees some drops of honey on the leaves of the bush. He stretches out his tongue and licks them. So that's not the entire folkloric myth as relayed by Tolstoy, because he goes on to say that this is a metaphor for life, which I definitely agree with, but then he takes it in a very sort of dark direction. He laments that he, as in Tolstoy, he no longer tastes life's sweetness, and he says, quote, "Those two drops of honey, which more than all else had diverted my eyes from the cruel truth," meaning of his mortality, and the honey for Tolstoy was the love for his family and for his writing, which he called art, "I no longer found sweet." Well, that's really depressing as hell, isn't it? That not even the love for his family and his writing, the things, maybe the two most important things in his life, were no longer sweet to him. And it was all, I also find it sort of striking that someone is steeped in human psychology, which if you read Anna Karenina, it's just, Tolstoy is just amazing in his insight into the character's psychology, and that's why that story in particular has such a timelessness, because it feels so fresh, and I think anyone from any time can really relate to it. It's amazing that someone so steeped in human psychology, so insightful, I don't know if maybe amazing is not the right word, it's sort of sad that he would see those things, love of writing, love of family, as a distraction from his inevitable demise that awaits him. I think that's kind of sad. So I think Life Indigo, although it recognizes the cruelty and absurdity of life, it also recognizes the honey that should be tasted. And that could be either, the very positive things, family, art, community, religion, if that's your thing. But also, I think on top of that, is recognizing the absurdity of life as well. So even those difficult things that happen in the course of your life, where it almost seems like there's an evil fiend out there, setting up events in a particular way that, maybe only Monty Python could think of something like that. To recognize that it's so bad that it's hilarious. So that's also part of Life Indigo. Not only appreciating the inherently wonderful things like life and nature and art, but also the hilarity behind the ridiculous things that we have to go through, before we meet our end. So that's sort of the working definition of Life Indigo, and I think it's a reflection. Life Indigo is sort of a reflection of how we're built, how human beings built, or maybe should be built. That no matter how how dark things get, we can find the light. You know, we can't control the darkness, but we can control what we choose to see or taste. So, yes. So Laura says like MASH, exactly. So MASH is a good example. The TV show MASH with Alan Alda, a wonderful, what a wonderful man, what a wonderful actor. And yes, that was set during the Korean War, a very difficult time, a horrible time. Yet there was comedy mixed in there. There were a lot of tears, but a lot of laughter. So I think that's an excellent example. Right, resiliency. Stephanie points out that resiliency is, well, she says resiliency. I don't know why she's saying that. Maybe that's a good thing. Yeah, no. That is resiliency. I think probably is something that arises from a life indigo sort of attitude towards life. That if you can, you know, laugh at the tragedies, at the absurdities, that is going to make you more resilient. It's going to be able to, you know, steel yourself, you know, for the next absurdity that comes along, because it will. It will. If anybody, you know, has any other comments, examples, criticisms, just musings, chime in now. I will ramble on for another minute or so. I don't want to go on too long, but I do thank you for your participation. So I'm thinking for the next edition of the Life Indigo Facebook Live event, that I was going to talk about curses, and this again relates to my book, Casper Mutzemacher's Cursed Hat. Little plug there. I was so that story involves a cursed hat, the god Hermes hat, and there's a curse connected with that. But I'm not going to talk about that particular curse. I'm going to talk about some other curses, and what I'm going to kind of think about, explore with you all. What do these superstitions tell us about human psychology, the human condition? I think it says something about how we like our treasures, you know, these cursed objects. We love these treasures, we covet them, but we always mix them with a little bit of tragedy, right? It's just not right if it's just all rainbows, you know, rainbows and cotton candy. We always have to have a little tragedy in there, you know, making it kind of bittersweet. So I'm going to explore that in the next one. And if you have any ideas, suggestions, comments for other topics along the lines of Life Indigo, please let me know. You can do it afterwards. I'm going to upload this to YouTube. You can comment there. And that's about all I have. Hey, thanks for sitting in. I will see you all next time. And until then, live a life indigo. Peace.